So this is going to be a pretty in-depth video on all the methods I've used in the past for steelhead fishing. This is going to be like a steelhead fishing 101. I cover spinners, spoons, pulling plugs, bobber fishing, bobber dogging, and some books that I've had over the years. And so stay tuned. I hope you guys get something out of it. And don't forget, give me that thumbs up if you find something interesting. If you want to see more like this, hit that subscribe button. Tie lines. See you on the water. So in this video, I'm going to talk about different methods for steelhead fishing. The first method I'm going to talk about is throwing spinners. Now, one of the more popular spinners you can buy in the store are Blue Fox. They've just been around for a long time and they're very popular. There's got to be 100 different color schemes, and you just got to figure out what color you're going to have with you when you go down to the river. Here's an orange with a brass blade. Here's an orange with a candy back. So the back of the blade is a different color than the front. Your front is chrome with a red butt. The back side is like a candy apple green. They call them candy backs. Sometimes they're pink, sometimes they're green, but they're called candy backs. And now the packages, you have to turn it around and look, and they'll show you the color of the back of the blade. That's something new. It's been on the market for a few years now, relatively new. So this is orange speckled, and another popular is, this is the Michael Jackson. It's black speckled bell with a chrome with the orange butt. That's pretty popular. Here's just blue with chrome blade. It's like I said, there's got to be 100 different variations of these spinners. When someone wants to come in and, oh, I need a spinner, I want to start fishing. No, you need about 10, trust me. But when you're spinner fishing, you're not doing it correctly unless you're losing spinners, which makes it expensive, which is why I make my own. It's a lot cheaper to, and less of a heartbreak when you lose a spinner. Here's one, it's got some kind of, it's not really hoochie, but it's got some kind of skirt. That's a Blue Fox. It's chrome with tiger stripes. I've got some orange tiger stripe ones that I did really well up in Alaska for silvers. They seem to like those. So bright orange, chartreuse, they're all really good spinner colors. So I'm going to talk about spoons, and then I'll talk about the rod that I use for these. Spoons, the reason why they're called spoons, because they look like your kitchen spoon. It started out with a guy dropping his spoon over the side of his boat, and he saw this steelhead just come up and nailed it. And that was the start of spoon fishing. True story. This one is BC Steel. Bill Herzog really loves these. He promotes these a lot. Pentec is who makes this. Call Sarah up over at Pentec. She'll hook you up. Now I didn't buy them rigged because I'm going to rig them myself. You can buy them pre-rigged. Here's P-Line's version of their spoon. They come in different colors. This is half chrome, half blue, with a Siwash on it. They come in 4 packs. You can get them in different color variations. Here's just all chrome. You can get them all brass, all gold. There is a difference between brass and gold. I truly don't. Some people like gold, some people like brass. It's a Ford Chevy conversation. This is a Steely. This one happens to have some color on it. It's not really hammered. It does have a print on it. They also make just all brass, and that's a hammered brass. This is a pretty popular spoon, Steely's. They've been around for a long time. Crocodile. with the treble on it. It's got a red treble. I don't know if I put that on there or if it came with. Here's a Ford fender. I really don't know who makes that one, but it's a Ford fender spoon. When you go to the store, you'll just see all kinds of different spoons these days. As far as the rod, this is your typical Steelhead rod. This is one of my old Berkley IM7s. When I first started fishing, this was pretty popular in the store, and the price point, you couldn't beat it. They were like 50 bucks. They go on sale for like $42 at Bi-Mart, and that's when I started fishing here in the Pacific Northwest. These are the rods that I went with because they were just a good price point, and it's just a good rod. Feels good in the hand. Cork. They're graphite. It's an IM7. Then they went to IM8s. Berkley doesn't make salmon steelhead rods anymore. And so they're hard to get. You can still find them eBay, Craigslist, Facebook Market, that kind of thing. And so the money for what you paid for these rods, they're just a good rod. This one happens to have a Daiwa BG reel on it. This is the monster reel. I think this is a 4,000 or 3,500. So it's a big reel. These are heavy reels too. So when you're buying a combo, a rod reel combo, you have to figure out what's going to work best on your rod, what's going to feel good, and just how balanced it is. Where how you're going to cast, because you're going to cast all day. This is a heavy reel. Just know that. There are some super light reels out there. The Shimano Vanfords are just incredibly light, smooth reels. But there's a big price difference too. So when it comes to throwing spoons and spinners, anything that's your steelhead size rod, and that is like 6 to 10 line rating, 8 to 17, 8 to 12. You start getting into the 10 to 20, still doable, but you start to get into your silver and coho size fish and your Chinook. So if you're planning on hooking into a silver or a Chinook, the 10 to 20 might work. But most of my steelhead rods, and I've got a few, are 8 to 17, 8 to 12, or 6 to 10. 9 foot, 9.5, 10.5, or 10 and 10.5 foot, depending on how you're going to fish. If I'm doing bobber, 9.5 to 10.5 are my bobber rods. I could throw spinners with an 8.5 to 9 foot rod quite easily, and spoons. So you don't have to break the bank if you're starting to fish. You can get away with a setup for about 150 bucks. Shimano's got a scimitar rod. I've got one for my son. I think the whole thing was about $150 between the rod and the reel. I got a Shimano, I think Sahara or a Sedona reels. They're good reels. If you're just starting out, you don't have to break the bank. So now I'm going to talk about pulling plugs. This is my plug rod. I've got two of these. They're identical. Bought them both at the same time. They were probably about 20 bucks a piece at the time. This is a North River NR 801 BB 8 foot one piece plug rod. It even says so right on there, plug rod. BB's back bouncing. It's rated 10 to 25, so it's a little bit of a heavier rod. And the lure rating is half to 30 ounce. I don't understand the 30 ounce, but I'm still trying to figure that out. When I get an answer, I'll let you know. Typically for your plug rods, you want a line counter. So when you have 2 or 3 rods out and you have your lures out there, they're all out the same range. They have to be out. You want that wall of plugs because you're pushing those fish back until they have nowhere to go, because you're pushing them into the back of the hole. When they have nowhere to go, they're going to come, they're going to hit that like a freight train, your plug, whatever you're using for a plug. And I'll go over plugs here in just a second. But if you just have a bait casting reel like this, without a line counter, you don't have to go out and buy a line counter. This is an Abu Garcia 5601 C4. It's a left hand. I like left hand because I'm a right-handed guy. I retrieve left. That's just the way I am. And so you could put a bobber stop, or you could take like a permanent marker and put like 1 dash for 25 feet, 2 dashes for 50 feet, 3 dashes for 75 feet. As long as all the rods have the same length out, that's what's critical for plug fishing. It's ideal to have all your rods the same. Be nice to have all your reels the same too, because you just want everything the same when you're plug fishing. And I've got two identical setups just like this. Back in the day, it was just a bait casting reel like this. Line counters weren't, you know, real popular back then. And so this is my plug rod. It's not broken. I ain't gonna fix it. So it works for me, and that's what I go with. Back in those days, we used to do pulls. We used to count pulls between the reel and the first guide. 15. Okay, we're gonna do 15 pulls. 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, 15 pulls, and then we knew how much was out there. But there really was no indicator on here to tell you how far out you were, and that's really nice. With the line counters, you look down and go, oh, okay, they're all out at 45 feet or 40. So now I'm going to talk about plugs. This one happens to be a 3.5 mag lip. This is the Dr. Death. This is a Steelhead killer. This is the first plug that goes on the end of the rod. For me, it's going to differ between people. 10 fishermen, 10 different ways to fish. You're going to hear me say that a lot. So this just happens to be a mag lip. Another popular are the warts, the wiggle warts by Brad's. This is the purple and pink. Here's just straight up pink. Some of these are like wee warts, wee wigglers, just your regular wiggle warts. Lord Jensen makes them, Brad's, all kinds of different people. Hot shots. This is a pretty popular plug to pull, and I've extended the hook on this one. I've just added a barrel swivel and a snap ring in there. That way it gives, if a fish decides to just start spinning around, he's not going to get any resistance from the lure and less chance of losing a fish. This is a green pirate from Quick Fish, pretty popular. Another hot shot. This is a blue pirate, and I've extended the hook on that one. If you go to the store, you're going to see a ton of different colors, sizes, and shapes. The orange with the herring stripe, they call it the herring scheme, I think. Just tiger stripe. We did pretty well on coho on these last year. The mini, we just nailed coho on these. It was, I think it was, yeah, these wee wigglers by Brad's. Another mag lip. This is, it's got some dots on it. I don't know if you can see the color on those, but I really like this color scheme. I follow this color scheme on my lures that I use for Chinook as well. Mad Clown, Silver Mad Clown, the Mad Clown shoes. You know, it's just seems to be a good color. Here's another mag lip. This is a 3.0 with extended hook. This one happens to be, I think this is the Misty River. Another good color. It's got pink. It's got some stripes on it, and the purple. You know, you just got to go out there and start fishing some of these colors and see what's going to work for you. So I've got a ton of different plugs. You know, you just got to try different stuff and see what they're going to like. Go with pink, Steelhead, pink. Can't go wrong. So now I'm going to talk about bobber fishing. And a steelhead rod is a steelhead rod. There are some bobber rods out there. Bottom line is they're 9, 9.5, 10, 10.5 foot rods, 8 to 17, 8 to 12, 6 to 10. You just want some length on the bobber rod because you're going to need to mend that line as it's going down the river. You're going to mend that line to keep this float straight up and down. When we're talking about bobber jig, bobber eggs, anything besides bobber doggin, this float's got to stay vertical in the water. If, for the sake of this discussion, the river flow's going that way. If your bobber's going down the river like this, it means you have too much gear down below it, and you have to adjust your bobber stop to bring it up. So you're going to slide your bobber stop towards the bobber until that bobber is straight up and down. Ideally, you want whatever you have under here, whether it's jig or eggs or whatever you have underneath your bobber, a foot off the bottom. So if it starts dragging and you adjust it and it's going straight up and down, you want to maybe adjust it a little bit more so that whatever's down here is about a foot off the bottom of the river floor. Fish can't see down, they can only look up. So you want your lure, you know, where they can see. That's the whole idea. If your bobber is going down the river like this, you have too much line behind the float, because you just want like a candy cane loop, you know, just a half loop in the water. You don't want a whole bunch. If you have too much, your lure's going to go down like this. You're going to have to pick it up, reel in, mend it. And that's the whole idea behind having a longer rod that allows you to mend your line as the bobber's going down the river. When you cast upriver, you're going to be reeling in until it gets right to where you are. Then you're going to flip your bail and you're going to be mending your line as it's going down the river, because it's going to take more line. That's why spinning reels are pretty popular for doing bobber fishing. And so I'm going to go over it once again. So when you rig it, you have your bobber stop, you have your bead, your bobber, another bead, and then your inline weight. So let's talk about those a little bit. Your inline weight is what's going to help balance what this is rated for. Whatever underneath this float, the inline weight and your jig are going to balance out whatever this is rated for. You want that water level somewhere in here, as long as you can see the top, because once that goes below the water level, wham, you want to, sometimes it'll be the hook hooking on something, it'll drag it under water. Doesn't matter, treat it like a fish. If this goes underwater, set the hook. That's the bottom line. You don't want to be talking to your buddy, oh yeah, and then the other day Bob tells me, and then you look and your bobber's gone, you're like, oh no, where's my bobber? It's probably a fish spitting the hook out. By the time you get up there to set the hook, he's already spit the hook out. Fish can't do that. I don't know how they spit a hook out, but they do. So when it comes to these inline weights, there's several different types. There's these banana weights, there's a bead chain on one end and a swivel on the other. I'm not even sure which one would go up, which one would go down, but there's these ones with these rubber tabs you can pull, and it stretches the rubber in it, and then so you can just slide this right onto your line. There's a few different types of inline weights. As long as everything, whoa, as long as everything is balanced below the bobber and your water level is somewhere in here. All right, so let's talk about what goes on the other side. So you have your main line, your inline weight, and then your leader is going to go here. And so I did a lot of bobber jig fishing. And so one of the more popular jigs is this Nightmare. It's a white head, red body, black tail. That's your Nightmare scheme. You'll see that in a lot of jigs, whether it's a twitching jig, bobber jig. This is one of the first go-to colors that hits the water. I think is the black and white, the contrast that catches their eye, and then they want to nail it. When you're fishing these jigs, you have to make sure that they're vertical. If when they come out of the water, sometimes you'll snag on a rock or whatever and they'll come out like that. Mend it. You have to fix it. Slide that knot so that that jig is in the water vertical, just like that. One thing to pay attention to when you're jig fishing. There's all kinds of different colors. That's the Nightmare. One of the other jigs I've had success on is this is like they call it a shrimp. I tie my own jigs. I started losing jigs, and at $3 to $5 a piece, I just decided to tie my own. Now I've got probably a couple hundred jigs because I've just had the time to do it. Peach, you know, I put a little tail on there, some flash. I always like to put beads in there. This one is a nickel head. You know, the way I tied these up, it's a jig hook, and the bead is nickel, and it goes through a pin, and the pin is tied to the hook. It's like a First Bite style jig. Mark from First Bite, that's where I modeled my jigs after. Mark retired. Mark, thanks for everything. I bought one of his vices. He kind of walked me through how to tie these up, because there is an art form to tying these up, and I have a video. Maybe I'll post a link right up there. And so different colors. This is pink and white with a little bit of flash, and I always put a little tail on there. I always like to put beads. And so they're different sizes as well. You know, 3/8, half, a quarter, an eighth. Depends on the river. If it's got color, if it's low and clear, you want small presentation. If it's got a lot of color and it's got some good flow, bigger presentation. And that's how big of a float and how big of a weight you're going to do compared to what you're going to have. Feathers. What you're going to have under your float. You could do eggs, you could do shrimp, all kinds of bobber setups that you can do. All right, so now I'm going to talk about bobber doggin. This is one of my Berkeley Buzz Ramsey rods, IM8. I think this one's 9.5, 10 foot, 8 to 17 or 8 to 12. Could be even 6 to 12. I'll have to look at it. So the difference between your regular bobber jig style of fishing, that your typical is going to be straight up and down vertical. With bobber doggin, your bobber is going to lay on top of the water like this. So your bobber stop's going to be way further away from your float. When you reel up, and this is all the way up against the top of your rod, that bobber stop should be somewhere. See if I can do this without banging a bunch of stuff. I'm still banging a bunch of stuff. That bobber stop needs to be between your reel and the first guide. Because the idea is they've combined drift fishing with bobber fishing. And so your weight is going to be bouncing along the bottom and not suspended underneath your typical float, your bobber float style of fishing. This is bobber doggin. This is going to be horizontal. The river current is pushing against this. This is dragging this along the bottom. And now I'm hooked. And right now I have that's probably about a 12 millimeter bead on there, soft bead. I'll talk about beads here in a little bit. But the whole idea behind bobber doggin is it's bouncing this along the bottom, and then you're going to have your leader. I have a 3-way right here. So the way this is rigged up, same way as your other bobber setup. You're going to put on your bobber stop, a bead, your bobber, another bead, and then I have a 3-way swivel right here, and I'm going to have a dropper. And so whatever weight I decide to put on here, this weight happens to be a stony weight. It's actually made out of stone. If I lose it, it goes back in the river, it's just another rock in the river. I'm not losing lead or poisoning the river with lead. I still use lead, so it's not like I'm anti-lead or anything. But these were out for a while, and I bought a whole bunch. I like these because the size of the weight compared to how heavy it actually is, it's bigger, so it doesn't get caught up as much in between rocks. So I just happen to like those. I still have them. I still use them. Whatever weight works for you. P-Line makes these rubber coated, and they're pretty popular for bobber doggin. Dave's, I think, started out with this, and now P-Line makes a whole bunch of these. Quarter, eighth, 3/8, halves, all the way up to 3/4, and I think even 1 ounce. So they're in the stores, pretty popular. So now on the other end of this 3-way, I have my leader. I tend to run a long leader when I'm running bobber doggin. That is almost about 5 foot leader, and you could do 3 foot, 4, but I tend to run long leaders. And sometimes what I'll do, this is just a single bead, that's how I'm running this one. Sometimes what I'll do is run 2 leaders, And when I do a 2-liter setup, I'm running a big soft bead. That's a 20 millimeter. These are all 20s. And I'll run a 20 in the front. I'll directly tie my 2nd leader right onto the hook. And on the trailing leader, I'll use a smaller offering. Most of the beads I'm running are soft beads. There are hard beads as well, but it's a whole Ford Chevy conversation. Soft bead versus hard bead. Some guys like the hard beads, some guys like the soft beads. Right now, soft beads, I think, is probably more popular than the hard beads. The way I tie up my soft bead to my leader, you can see I've got a little 4 millimeter bead right there. And the way I tie this onto the leader is once I pass the leader through the 4 millimeter bead, I'll do 2 more loops through it. So there's at least 3 loops going through this small 4 millimeter bead. And the whole idea is you don't want this bead up against the hook. You want 2 to 3 fingers between the hook and the bead. The whole idea is once the steelhead mouths, because that's what they do. They think these is a predator's eggs. They don't want them near their territory. They'll mouth it. But once they figure out it's not an egg, they're going to spit it out. That's why when that bobber goes down, you have to yank it. You have to know what a hit looks like, feels like. The whole idea is once they mouth this, that hook's going to grab them in the side of the mouth. And that's why you want 2 to 3 fingers from the bead to the hook. You want that nice side hook right in the side of the mouth. You don't want them swallowing this hook. You want to be able to release the wilds. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about soft beads. There's all kinds of different manufacturers. These right here happen to be B&R. There's a few other manufacturers out there. One of the things I like about the B&R, they already have the hole through the bead. And they come with T-stops. And you could see the T-stop I have on these bigger beads. But I also, because what happens with the T-stops, they're not infallible, they do slide towards the hook when you're reeling in. If you're just reeling in to recast, or if you've had a fish on, that bead's going to slide down to the hook. You have to reset it. And so that's why I've just gotten used to the idea of just using a 4 millimeter bead, and I know it's not going to move. One of the other beads on the market right now is Oregon tackles, and I haven't used these yet, but I think this is probably going to revolutionize how we do soft beads. These are infused with scent from Procure. So Procure and Oregon Tackle got together and made an infused soft bead. This is like the coolest thing that's hit the market, I think, in a few years now. So I haven't used these yet. I haven't gone winter steelhead fishing this year yet, but this is going to be the first thing that goes on my rod are these scented infused beads. Very cool stuff. I haven't seen them in the stores. You'll have to go to Oregon Tackle to their storefront, because I don't know if any Fisherman's doesn't carry Oregon Tackle, Sportsman's does, but I have not seen these in the store yet. You can go to their storefront, give them a call, let them know you're coming, and they've got a bunch of these, so go get them. Now, I wanted some mottled scented beads. They didn't have them. They made these for me. So now I have these mottled scented soft beads. That's going to be the first one that goes in the water. Great stuff, Oregon Tackle. Doug, thanks, man. You're great. Another bead that I did really well on last year are these glow-in-the-dark beads. This is from Clear Drift. Clear Drift is the only manufacturer I know that makes glow-in-the-dark beads. The only way you're going to know off the shelf is you look at the sticker on the back and it says glow on it. Doesn't mean like, oh, it's got a nice glow on it. No, it means glow in the dark. And here's a picture of the beads with the lights on. Here's a picture of the beads with the light off. You can see how much these glow. And so these, I'll show you some ones that I have right here. These are actually orange, but these are glow beads. and I did pretty well on them last year. So if I do a double rig setup, guess what? I'm going to put a glow on one, and I'm going to put a scented on the other one. And I don't know. We'll see how we do. Reading materials. So, reading materials. I'm going to show you some of the books that I've had over the years. Here's a color guide to drift fishing. That's how I started steelhead fishing, was drift fishing. I've since moved on to bobber doggin. It's a good book, a lot of information. All these books have just a ton of information. This is Western Steelhead Fishing Guide. They talk about rivers, lots of pictures. This one just talks about everything: spoons, spinners, bobber, everything. This one is by Jed Davis, spinner fishing, salmon, steelhead, and trout. And so they talk about how to cast into a river. You cast upriver, let it swing, and then it's going to swing by you. And then, you know, you're going to cover, they're going to teach you how to cover water and where fish like to lie. All of it's good reading. Here's Buzz, or not Buzz, sorry Buzz. Here's Bill Herzog's book. I've had this one for years and I still go to it. And it's just, there's just a ton of information here. You can see he's got illustrations of how to cover a river, and it, you know, you could apply it to spinner, you could apply it to bobber. If you're casting, and if you're doing cast and retrieving in the river, all this really applies. And so, and there's, I don't have a book on just bobber fishing, but there's a ton of videos. Check out the Addicted guys. I don't have any affiliation with them, but they've got a ton of videos out there on how to do any kind of fishing you could think of. Those guys have a video on it. So anyway, so I covered a lot in this video. I threw out a lot. This is mainly for the guys that like come into my store. For those of you who don't know, I work at Sportsman's on 82nd and here in Clackamas in the fishing department, and I got people coming in, hey, I haven't fished 20 years, how do I do this? I want to catch a salmon, I've never caught a fish before. It's a learning curve, you know. For those people that want to catch a salmon for their first fish, start small. Go big later. It's a learning curve for sure. I've been doing this here in Pacific Northwest for over 20 years, and I'm still learning. You know, these videos, you know, weren't around 20 years ago. And so it was a lot of hunting and searching, you know. I covered a lot of methods, but as far as the places and the spots to go to, that's a learning curve. Go talk to people, just go find water, go get your lines wet. You know, you'll figure it out. So that's the fun part. Once you get it figured out and you land that first fish, you're going to be like, woohoo! And that's what it was for me. So I'm going to show you a picture right here. This is the day I was going to sell my drift boat. It took me years floating down this river, and finally got this nice hatchery keeper steelhead on a home tied jig, and I was going to sell my boat that day. I swore this was the last run for me, and I still have that drift boat. That's the one you saw me redoing the bottom on, and I've been hooked ever since. You know, go hit a guide up. That's what the guides are for. You know, if you're learning and you're getting frustrated, go out there, get a guide, do a float, do a ride on a sled. You know, these guys will teach you everything you need to know. And so a lot of good information out there. This video, hopefully it'll get you started. You know, the gear could be intimidating. Don't let it be. The only thing I could really advise is whatever you go down to the river with, just have different colors, different sizes. Don't buy one lure thinking it's going to be the catch-all lure. You need to have different color sizes. You know, like I said before, the color of the day will dictate the color of the lure. The flow of the river is going to dictate the size of your lure. You know, low and shallow, long leader. If it's got a lot of flow, you want a bigger rig. So that's pretty much the name of the game. Anyway, I hope this helps you guys out. If it did, give me that thumbs up. If you want to see more like it, hit that subscribe button down there. Tight lines, see you on the water.